Hello, today we have some great tips for you for the month of April. Now April is the month when we really kick off our growing season here in Oklahoma. And I want to start with fruit trees. Some of you are growing fruit trees in the landscape, and to get a really good quality fruit, typically we have to get on a good spray program to control insects and diseases. However, when the tree is in bloom, we don't want to use insecticides because that can affect pollination. Pollination occurs by bees and other flying insects, and if you spray insecticides at that time, then you can kill them and reduce the pollination on our fruit trees. So we want to avoid that. Now you can continue with your disease spray program though, with your fungicides, and that's usually okay, but be sure that you follow labeled directions. Now we also want to talk about some turf tips. This is the time when we would start paying a little bit more attention to our warm season grasses such as Bermuda grass, zoysia grass, buffalo grass. And this is the month that we would apply our first application of fertilizer. And usually we apply about 1 pound of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Now for mowing, for Bermuda grass and zoysia grass, we're going to mow at a height of about 1 to 1.5 inches, and for buffalo grass at about 1.5 to 3 inches. And if you're going to establish a new warm season grass, wait till the latter part of April. That's the best time to start that process using things like sprigs, plugs, and sod. For landscape plants like trees and shrubs, you want to make sure you take good care of them, especially if they're newly planted. The new plants are often grown in soilless mixes, so what that means is they have high organic matter, lots of bark and peat moss, and those can dry out actually pretty quickly. So when you water a new plant, you want to make sure you water it at the root ball, at the base of the plant. Make sure that you keep it nice and moist. Not saturated, and don't let it dry out too much, but try to keep it moist to encourage good root growth. Now overall, as far as watering in the landscape, what we really want to do is water long enough to wet the soil down to about 6 inches, maybe even a little deeper, especially for trees. Down to 10 to 12 inches would be ideal, and keep that root zone area nice and moist to encourage deep root growth. If we're watering frequently but for shorter periods of time and the water's only soaking in a few inches, then all the roots are going to grow in those top few inches, and then when we get into the real stressful part of the summer, those plants can't tolerate it. So we want to encourage good deep root growth. Now this is also a good time to inspect our plants from look for maybe some damage that may have occurred from last growing season. It was pretty stressful, or our winter months. And you can see this plant here has some tip dieback. And so we can go through and clean up our landscape plants by coming back and clipping that out, clipping it back to live growth, and then maybe just do a general inspection and do any shaping and training that we need to do. Now for annuals and perennials, this is the time where we would start planting our summer annuals especially. And we want to make sure that we are out of the dangers of our frost and freezes, of course. In Stillwater, the average last frost date here is around April 15th. You know, it's looking pretty good right now that we may skip a late frost or freeze, but you always need to be prepared. So if you decide to put your bedding plants out now, be prepared to cover them if necessary. Now there are some that are warm season plants, like Catharanthus, which is the annual vinca or periwinkle. That's a good example of a warm season annual. And what that means is not only do they need warm air temperatures, but they need warm soil temperatures as well to really perform. And I looked on the Mesonet site this morning to check out the soil temperatures, and throughout the state, it was on average about 59 to 61 degrees soil temperature. And that's still a little bit cool for some of our warm season crops, so we might want to wait a little bit longer, wait till those temperatures are up in the mid 60s, upper 60s, before we put those warm season annuals in the ground. And then finally, if you have spring flowering bulbs in your landscape, such as tulips and daffodils, etc., you want to make sure that you allow that foliage to turn yellow and start dying back before you cut it back. Don't cut it back right now or too early, because all that green foliage right now is producing energy for the bulb and storing it up for the flower production next year.